I want to know if I am wrong about something. So I'm going to run you through kind of what I'm thinking, and then I want you to tell me where I go astray. And just to kind of set the lens that I would like you to examine this through, I'd like you to use the what I call the reals lens: reason, empirical evidence, logic, scientific methodology. So we're kind of using a reason-based approach to this. If you would please look at it from that perspective. Um, I have been for close to 20 years, I guess 15 years to play it safe, voluntarist, and have been an active, outspoken voluntarist for maybe the last 10 years. And I continue to strongly believe in voluntarism. I would say that the probably the two most popular people who share my belief system, and that almost everything they say I can go, yeah, I think I generally agree with that, would probably be Larkin Rose and Patrick Smith. And there are a lot of other people in my circles or who I've heard who I agree with. But as far as being popular content producers or philosophers, whatever, I would put those two guys up there. And then I'm going to bring up a third friend, Mark Maresca, who is the white pill guy. And he has a very optimistic outlook for the future. And I am a white pilled. I'm not anti white pilled, but I have not yet been persuaded. And I'm going to go through some of my thinking and reasoning here and see what y'all think. One of the other people who I follow, who I get ideas from, who I take time to listen to and watch, is Tom Bilyeu. And he is not a voluntarist by any stretch of the imagination. He's a smart guy, though. He's been successful in business. He's had a podcast for over 10 years, incredible work ethic. There are a lot of qualities of the guy that I really like. And there's some areas that I strongly disagree. But he looks at the world from a very pragmatic perspective. And I would say his perspective is almost completely absent moral philosophy. He doesn't say, is it right or wrong? He doesn't care. All he cares about is what the ultimate result will be. And he believes that central planning often fails and that there are some dangers, but he probably, if he was a central planner, things would work out much better. And I guess we all might believe that to a certain point. Like I don't think central planning is a good idea for the public, for society to be centrally planned. I think it's great for a ma and pa store to be centrally planned. The little grocery store in the corner, yeah, that definitely needs central planning, but not people who haven't given their permission to be planned for. That I am opposed to. However, I would say that pragmatically, if you could have Joe Biden or Ronald Reagan or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton central planning, or if you could have me central planning, oh, I think if I was emperor for a day, a king for a day, I think my plan would be way better than theirs. Now, I would never do that because that's wrong. But that's kind of Tom's outlook, is that, yeah, it's not the greatest thing, but it's what's got to happen, and let's be very pragmatic. Okay. I also am impressed by and follow some Stoics. And I think there's a lot of bad status stuff that they say, a lot of altruistic stuff that I don't agree with, but they say a lot of things that really resonates with me. And I'm like, yeah, I like that idea. And one of those is that one ought to look around, see the world around them, and if they don't like something, figure out, hey, is this something I can change? And if you can change it, by golly, get on it, make it happen. If you can't change it, if there isn't a high probability that you can change that thing, then you should have the serenity to accept, hey, I can't do anything about this. So therefore, I'm not going to spend all my time worrying about it, thinking about it, putting my energy there. I'm going to move on to something else that I can control and then do a great job building a wonderful life there, knowing that that other thing really sucks. Well, then I turn all of this big preamble I've done about some of the people who I listen to and evaluate their ideas. Now I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture about a conclusion that I'm being led toward that I don't like. And that is, I am an anarchist. In other words, I'm not uh, an anti-statist. That would be somebody who would be like goes out and goes against the government, and I would never do something like that. However, I don't believe that there's any such thing as just moral authority. I don't think governments should exist. I've never been persuaded that it's morally acceptable for them to exist. I've never been persuaded that it's even necessary for them to exist. Like, let's assume that we all agree they're evil. I don't even think that they are a necessary evil. I think society would organize on its own, not be utopia either which way. But I don't think the state is necessary. So I then look around and say, hey, there's a bunch of state around me. The state is stealing 38% of what I earn. The state controls so many of the things that I do. They boss me around. They take my money. Uh, they for a long time had me on their list that if they ever needed to make some money for the military-industrial complex, that they get something started up, and I was going to have to go and fight, maybe die for them. So they've done a lot of things to kind of tick me off, and I'm definitely not on their side. So then I say to myself, self, can I get rid of government? Should I become an anti-statist? Should I go about dismantling the state, uh, either through violence or some other method? Should I go out there and actively make that happen? And what would my probability be that I would be successful? Well, I'm a guy in my 50s who has some great ideas, some bad ideas, a very strong work ethic, but not a lot of personal discipline to systematically do something. And I don't have not the best marketer in the world. I'm not the best advertiser. I'm not the best cold call salesman. I'm not a natural leader. There are a lot of things that would be necessary for someone who is going to be successful. There'd be a lot of things, that characteristics, skill sets that person would have in order to have a high probability of success. Oh, including a big, let's call it a war chest, a bunch of money to spend to stop the state. Well, I basically standing back, 30,000 foot view. I ain't the guy. There's a very low probability that I would ever be able to eradicate the state. So now that I have come to that conclusion, and by the way, if you disagree, if you think I'm the guy and that I could go out and, I don't know, write a bunch of letters or get elected to be the king of the world, and then I could get rid of this. Like, if you think that I am the guy to do it, or that someone else is emerging who is going to do it, like if you think Donald Trump is probably next year going to go ahead and get rid of the state, like really drain the swamp, if you really think that kind of stuff's true, then let me know in the comments. But I think most of us would agree that neither Donald Trump nor I, for different reasons, are going to bring an end to statism in 2026 or 2025. And I would further say that if you look over the course of humanity, it is very unlikely, as a social theorist, as a social scientist, it is very unlikely that there will not be a state 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, etc. Now, this is where Mark Maresca, my friend, will disagree. I think his timeline is roughly 50 years until the state isn't defeated with swords, but it just kind of withers up and nobody believes in it anymore. So therefore, it isn't there. It just goes away and it stops having power, and people are just like would laugh at the idea of sending money to the government or obeying what they say. It no longer has any standing in their life. I hope he's right. By golly, I really hope he's right. But I'm not persuaded. And I am overweight, and I am in my 50s, and my life expectancy is approximately 20 to 22 more years. And with all of that in mind, I think there's a real good chance that we are not going to live in a stateless society within my lifetime. So, what does the rational, scientific methodology, reasonable person say? and think and choose as their course of action? Should I say and do what I have been doing, which is preaching and advocating, evangelizing for the non necessity, the badness of the state? Is that a good thing for me to do? Should I be going this uphill, unwinnable battle just because it makes me feel warm and cuddly that I'm doing the right thing at the right moment? And that has been a strong value of mine. One of my values is doing the right thing and not looking at things from that pragmatic perspective of what are the ends going to be and then what do I need to do to get there. When I look at things from a moral perspective, I say, no, I don't care what the result is going to be. Like, I have a preference, but I'm not going to let that, working backwards from that, determine what I do. I will to a certain extent, but it has to fit within those boundaries of being morally acceptable based on my subjective morality. And that's how I've chosen to live. And it occurs to me that I will continue living that way, but that is pretty dumb of me. And I have the potential to go out and create a better life for myself. I have the potential to make small differences and be involved in government in some ways. Like, for example, the Free Ross campaign, or another friend of mine who had that kind of a, sign a petition or for the government or whatever. I would really like to be able to participate in government affairs at a low level like that. But thus far, I've said no. I am not going to petition a government that shouldn't exist and authority that actually doesn't exist at all. I am not going to legitimize them by saying that I believe in their existence. And that's been what I've done thus far. And now I look at my pragmatic future and I wonder, how should I spend the next 22 years of my life? Probably the next 7 or 8 will be my most productive of my remaining years. Now that I have a good bit of knowledge that I've stacked up over the years and a good bit of money that I've stacked up over the years, and kind of putting those together and combining it with a few other characteristics I have, I think it's likely that the next 7 or 8 years of my life, my 50s, will be my most productive. I'll get the most done in those years. So, what should I do? Should I continue banging the drum of voluntarism? Or should I maintain that belief, but do what so many people have done before me that I never understood? Like, you understand this stuff. Why aren't you out yelling and screaming about it? And the person's like, because there are beautiful flowers growing and I want to go smell the roses and I want to build my business and I want to spend time with my family and my neighbors, even the statist ones. I want to go out and enjoy my time on this rock and try to make it a better place. And I think it's preferable to have a master that beats me less. And so, yeah, I'm going to put a bit of effort into that when I think that it's likely to happen. And it sure ain't at the federal level or the state level, but at the local level, I think I can kind of influence things. Yeah, probably not through voting, but through other ways of influencing. Well, the person who said that all these years, I've just been thinking, no, you've lost your edge. You're no longer a dyed-in-the-wool hardcore voluntarist. Shame on you. I wish you hadn't lost your spirit and your energy and your steadfastness. And now I'm wondering if you can explain to me why those people are in the wrong. And if I choose to follow that path, why am I wrong? And I'm not saying why am I immoral. We've already agreed on the morality part. Like, we've already agreed that we get to choose our morality. At least I have agreed that morality is subjective. There isn't some objective morality. And the morality that I've chosen, which is essentially voluntarism, as understood by some of the people I've mentioned, that is what I choose arbitrarily to be my morality. And that's what I think is best. And I don't see myself going against that. I don't see myself initiating violence against neighbors or voting for somebody to rule them, for both pragmatic reasons and moral reasons. But am I off base here on my conclusions that I've come to? I don't think I am. I don't see my blind spot. If there is one, please do let me know. And please do check out Patrick Smith's work, Larkin Rose's work, Mark Maresca's work, uh, and that because that's kind of the context within which I'm chatting. Also, Tom Bilyeu's work, and see if all of that put together makes some sense about why I'm thinking what I'm thinking. Okay, now for this final part, I'm going to talk about why this might matter. And this goes back to Tom Bilyeu. Tom Bilyeu is under the impression that China and the United States, and when I say those terms, I don't mean the geographical areas, I mean the governments of those places. And yes, I understand that the government of the United States area, the government that claims the United States area, that they aren't the United States. I get all that, but I'm just doing this for simplicity of language. I'm using common terminology here. So the United States is on a downward slope. The military is getting weaker. The even with Trump in, it's getting weaker. The economy is lousy. The central banking system is ruining us financially. Overall, our people, the people who live in this landmass, are becoming lousier. Fewer people know how to change their own tire or change out the light switch in their living room. Like fewer people are just capable, innovative, risk-taking, entrepreneurial type of people. And in China, the opposite is true. Their economy is doing better than the United States. Now they still have issues. They still have their central banking issues. Their military, rather than declining, is on the increase or inclining in its capabilities. And within a few years, I think they're saying 3, 4, 5 years, the Chinese military will be superior to the United States military industrial complex. I don't even know if that's the word because I think that complex probably serves both of the factions. Um, but they're going to be stronger than the United States. So if you're stronger, you have more people who know how to do engineering. You have a bigger labor force. You have, by every measure, the United States is slightly ahead right now, but won't be in 4 or 5 years. And at that point, China will be ahead. And if it comes to a hot war, then it'd be likely that the United States would lose. And then, from a just probability prediction kind of standpoint, what would the world look like? Not the world. What would my life look like? What would my world look like if the Chinese took over the United States, whatever that means? But the United States give an unconditional thing. Okay, you guys have the AI, atomic, whatever, and therefore we give up. You have the United States. We lose, you win. Well, my life would not look as good as it does now, based on predictions of what winners of wars have done in the past, and based on the collectivist, communist kind of attitude of China. That's not going to be good for me. So, if that has a way higher probability, let's say that you put that probability of China taking over within 5 or 10 years, if you put that probability at 5% or 10%, but it's a very real change in our life, like the importance is so high that it's worth thinking about, then why wouldn't I want to do something like learning Chinese instead of reading Most Dangerous Superstition yet again? Or why would I go out and try to get 4 more people to believe in voluntarism rather than, I don't know, rename my farm to being Friends of China Farm, or whatever I need to do to kiss up to survive? Why wouldn't I be putting all my efforts into that thing that could have a huge change in my life? Why wouldn't I be trying to put a change into what does really truly make my life good or bad? Why wouldn't that be my focus rather than that? I wouldn't even say 1 millionth. I wouldn't even say 1 millionth of a percent. I think the probability that I will materially change the outcome of the world and get China and the United States and all other governments to realize, oh, yeah, we're not in the right. We should back down and let a voluntary society exist unmolested. I, I think the probability is not even 1 in a billion. I think it's less than that. I wish it was strong, but I don't think it is. So then what should I go out and do tomorrow? What should you do tomorrow? Where should I put my effort, my time, my money? Um, what should I put it into? Is it wrong of me? Is it morally wrong or aesthetically wrong for me to put that energy into the pragmatic? Is there a 30% chance that we're going to have a monetary crisis in the United States in the next 10 years? Well, absolutely. When the dollar crashes or they go to the central, what do they call it? The digital currency that the government does, central banking still, like crypto. Crypto is such a bad name because it's not the cryptography that makes it awesome. It was the anonymity that we dreamed that it would have that makes it awesome. Anyway, there are other factors. Now I'm getting off and rambling. What do you think about what I've rambled about over the last little while here? Am I off base? Where do I go off base? Where would a better direction be for me to put my energies? How can I better clear my thinking and better understand the world around me and how to make my world? And yeah, great if I can help some neighbors as well. What can I do to do better?